so we'll do that. So we're starting the recording. This is the second class of the multi-generational families eating well, and I'll go ahead and start that up. See if we can get our Zoom to play well. Perfect. Awesome, guys. Okay. So class number 2. So we are here to be able to learn a little bit about snacks as well as heart healthy education options. So just something to be aware of is both of these are very extensive, like they are great classes. And I just want people to be able to be aware that they are 2 full classes. So at any point in time, if you have to stop, I think we are recording this for if you want to watch it later. I'm going to have an intermission in the middle of it after we finish the snacks, just for a 5-minute intermission. So if you need to get up and go to the bathroom or to be able to change anything, I don't want you to have to be stuck, because I know in classes when I've been in them, they can go long. And that can be very challenging. I don't think this applies because we have already had everybody sign up. So we are good. Thank you so much for doing all the pre-assessments so that we can be funded. And then again, questions. So send those to Marcy. I'm not going to be monitoring the chat, so she can stop me, or you're welcome to stop me at any point in time if you have any questions like Amy did. She just texted me, and I'll have my phone number at the end of this. So if anybody needs that, they can get hold of me through that one. Okay, so going into, and I'm just actually going to move our little screen here to smaller in the corner so that I have access to everything. Perfect. So last time we had a couple of really good questions, and there were 4 of them. So I just wanted to go through and make sure that I addressed those. So the first one was, so when I grind my wheat, is it better to do a little bit of sprouting, so allow it to grow out into a sprout, then dry it and grind it to be able to get some benefits? And so I actually looked this up for this to be able to have an understanding of, is it better to do the grains versus the sprouted? And it was great because I didn't know the answer to this one right off the bat. And so, and in my mind, I was thinking, okay, if something is growing like a plant, it's going to be a little bit different. So when you're comparing it to any kind of white flour, these are going to be nutritionally similar if you are comparing whole grain to sprouted ones. And so they're both superior to white flour. So you're going to get the same similar benefits, but there are a little bit of changes to it. When they give you sprouts, sometimes it's not just wheat. So if you have anything when it comes to a variety, you're going to get a variety of both minerals and vitamins that are going to be able to be a benefit to you. So if they give you just a whole seed and you're making sprouts, sometimes it'll have wheat, sometimes it'll have barley, it'll have lentils, it'll have soybeans, and it'll also have spelt. So if you have a broad variety of different things, you're going to have a broad variety of nutrients than just wheat alone. And so you'll get more different proteins that are coming from the different whole grains as well. You actually, because if you think about a vegetable, they have less carbs. And so as it starts to sprout out, some of what's inside the grain itself starts to get converted, and it changes more into fiber and less into carbs. So if you think of like a very big stalk of celery, there's not a lot of carbohydrates in it, but there is a lot of fiber and a little bit more water. So you're going to get more hydration for it. So maybe some of your baked goods might be a little bit more moist. So, and I think in the reference to this question, she said to dry it as well. That will be perfectly fine. You'll just have a little bit less carbs, but you'll have probably more vitamins as well. And then I think we were asking a little bit about the glycemic load as well. It actually, because there's a shift in lower carbs and higher fiber, it's actually lower on the glycemic. So it won't play with the blood sugars as much. So if somebody is diabetic that you know of, that this could be just a simple way of, if you just got a little sprouts and you got it grown out and you put that into your flour or into your bread, this is a way to be able to help balance that out a little bit better. As well, it will have a little bit higher in certain nutrients. It's not going to be a huge shift. So again, if we're comparing white flour to wheat or wheat flour or sprouted, you're going to have very comparable between the grain and the wheat, but there is a little bit more protein, fiber, vitamin B, as well as the vitamin C. So if you think of some fruits and vegetables, they are a little bit higher in those. So I just think it's starting to get more into the process of more of a vegetable. As well, there's a little bit higher in antioxidants. So that cancer effect can help out a little bit better as well. So it has higher in vitamin C and E, as well as beta carotene. So like if you think of carrots, they will tend to be a little bit higher in that as well. So if you have something that's sprouting out, there is a little bit more beta carotene as well. So vitamin E, antioxidants are going to be great. Going into the second one was our question on.
Brandon, we have another participant, Sheila, who's just joined us.
Sheila, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. So then I will go back to here. So Sheila, we are grateful to be able to have you. I believe you are new to us today. If you haven't already, I think Marcy, you have that link from last time. If you are able to share that in the chat with her, she can just click on it. Or if you have, you can just pull out your phone and you just open up the camera and this will be a QR code and it'll go straight to a pre-assessment. That assessment just helps us to be able to be funded because we're grant funded, to be able to help know, is this education helpful? And that is just much, much appreciated. And we're going through previous questions that we had from last week. And so I'm just going to move on to the next one. Just know that we are welcome to all questions. So there's no big or small thing. I just love to be able to answer questions that people have. And I go through and we have them broken down and I'll do all the research I can to make sure that we have answered those questions. And so the first question from last week was about sprouts versus grains. And so we talked a little bit about that earlier. And now going into, somebody asked a great question about how do I know what kind of bread to get in the store? So first thing is be careful of the color, because sometimes that can be just modified by either molasses or other ingredients that will turn the bread brown. So it's not necessarily the color of it, but you always want to be able to make sure to look at the ingredients. Even fancy names, if they're saying like, oh yeah, we have multigrain, we have 7-grain, we have ground this and brown that, like they can be literally colored white flour and bread that way. And then they just have a little bit of grain on top. And so there's very little whole grain. So we want to be able to get the best whole grain possible. And the best way to be able to check with that is looking at the nutrition labels. So to go along with what we saw earlier, if you look at the sprouted wheat, this nutritional label, this bread, was able to use sprouted wheat as one of its first ingredients. So to go along with Amy's question earlier, looking at that first ingredient, and then also when we go into it, you can see some of them are just bleached white flour versus sprouted wheat flour, as well as looking at the fiber content. So we want to try to get the highest amount of fiber as possible because that shows that it is a whole grain. And so for this one, because it is a sprouted, it's probably going to be higher up there as well. So usually over 2 to 3 is usually great. If it's lower, less than 1, usually that means it's been more refined. So you're getting more simple sugars versus complex. As well, another question that we had was, how do you assess how much 3 ounces of grains are? And so with these ones, I looked it up and it's great because sometimes people think like, oh, is it 16 grams or is it 28 grams? Because if you look at the nutrition label right next to us, you can see that there's a difference between the serving size versus how many grams or of carbs there actually are. And it can actually be a little bit of both. This can be just depending on how you're reading the nutrition label. For 1 ounce, it's going to be 28 grams of 100% whole grain is going to be an ounce, or it could be from the amount in it itself. So usually if you're getting whole grain and you go for 3 servings, that you're going to get, it's going to be an ounce per serving. So just so that you're aware of that, so that you are able to break that down. I don't want you to get too caught up in the numbers or the weeds. The best thing to be able to do is look at the serving size, look at the portion size. If you're having whole wheat and you have 2 slices of bread, fantastic. Now all you would need is another one throughout the day. And the goal is for men to shoot for, or sorry, for women is 5, and for 6 is for men. For grains in general, 3 of those you'd want to have as whole grains. And this is just a review from last week. If you weren't able to see that one for our newcomer, you're welcome to watch that on YouTube, and that will go through all of grains in general. And then the last one that we had a question from last week was, do I need to make sure to consume my water at the same time, or hydration at the same time as I do my fiber? And the timing itself is not as critical as making sure to be able to get the appropriate amount. And just overall, a good rule of thumb is, remember, glasses are not the same size as cups. So a single cup is 8 ounces. So if you're getting 64 ounces, so 8 glasses, 8 times 8 is 64. 64 ounces a day is good. If you're going to be more active or it's extra dry outside, we're getting into the summertime. If you're going to be more athletic, you'll want to increase that. So overall, it's sometimes a good thing is just look at the color of your urine If it's really dark amber or just dark yellow, we'll want to be able to make sure to just drink more fluids to be able to help flush out those kidneys. Okay, so yeah.
Brandon, we have a chat from Marta. This is great information, and I couldn't agree more.
I appreciate it. So awesome. So I think that goes into our class from last week. And I'm excited because we have some really good stuff going for the snacks this week. And let me just go ahead and pull up. All right. So the goal that we have for the this week is to be able to help families from kids all the way up to seniors to be able to have a little bit better understanding of how do we get healthy snacks. And one thing that I'd recommend is if you have a favorite snack, and I would encourage you right now in the chat, you're welcome to just put that down. Write down your favorite snack. I don't care if it's a ho-ho. I don't care if it's a ding dong. I don't care if you love eating similar to like things that are on this plate right here, where you're like celery and carrots. I like to be able to have granola bars. Whatever your family favorite snacks are, you're welcome to put those in the chat just so you can have an idea and we can keep kind of a group list. And I can put that up the next time we talk. And what I can do is I can tweak it a little bit to make sure it's a little bit more balanced if one of them are a little too carb heavy or all in one type of a thing. But we're going to talk a little bit more today about, okay, where are we at and how do we usually see snacks and how do we get there to the next goal? So the goal of this class, again, is to identify the health reasons for snacking. And so really just think of like, at least if you take nothing else from this class, 1 to 2 reasons why you want to start snacking and how to make it a little bit more healthful. As well, what does healthy look like? Because sometimes we start to demonize certain foods and we say like, oh, I can't have chocolate, I can't have fats, I can't have certain things. And as a dietitian, we want you to be able to have the best relationship with food possible. So we don't demonize foods and say like healthy versus good food versus bad food. It's more of there's certain foods you eat more of, certain foods you eat less of, certain foods you want to make sure to be able to pair together. As well, the last bit is making sure just to kind of have an idea of how do we start planning these snacks. And the first step is start thinking of what your family enjoys, because anybody can come up and give you like a menu plan and they can start telling you like, you should be eating this, you should be eating that. But really I found to be able to customize it for your own family, because if your family is of a different nationality, you like, I have a Hawaiian cousin and every single thing, like every meal that they have rice. And it's like, that's not bad. It's just a matter of how do you adapt that to your culture? If it's beans and rice, if it's more of like Indian tacos, like whatever it is, you want to be able to have a variety that your family's going to enjoy or you're going to enjoy, but make it in a balanced way that's going to be as healthy as possible for you. So if you haven't already, I'll just take just a couple of minutes, just write your favorite snacks, your top 3 things that you really enjoy. You're welcome to just put those down in the comments below, just so that we can kind of have an idea and just share things that you enjoy. So like if you are between breakfast, which we are now, and lunch, and you're a little bit kind of a little peckish, what would be a good snack that you would enjoy eating?
Do you want me to read them to you, Brandon, or just at the end, just save them all as a chat?
Yeah, just save them all. And what
Okay.
I'll do is I'll be incorporating it into the next week's class.
Okay, great. Okay.
Okay. Perfect. And as well, a majority of the time, we don't live alone. So think about not only your favorite snack, but if you have a spouse, if you have kids, because sometimes I have seen that this can be a challenge for parents to find like, what is that good, healthy snack? And I loved it because of going through this program. I realized that some of the first examples were things that I did when I went over to my sister's house to be able to help her out. And so the first one is, why do we snack? And this one overall, like what is recommended amongst just the medical professionals in general, and especially dietitians, is every 4 to 5 hours, you want to be consuming something to be able to have in your diet at least. So I don't like being hungry, and I'm a very active person. So usually for me, it's every 2 to 3 hours, I'm usually needing to put something in. That doesn't mean that you have to have a big full meal every single time. It's a matter of, if you have your three staples of breakfast, lunch, and dinner, the purpose of a snack is to make sure that you don't go into a meal overly hungry. Because I'm sure everybody here has been through it. It's just kind of a life thing. If you have kind of skipped a lunch, you got really busy with work, busy with the family, kind of moving around, and you missed a meal or missed a snack, and you're really hungry. It's been 6, 7 hours and you haven't eaten. When it gets to the point where you're just like, I don't care, I'm just going to eat whatever I can. If you're at that level, it, like, the healthy choices kind of go out the window, and your body is just in survival mode. It just wants to eat whatever it can. And so the goal is when we eat consistently smaller, more frequent meals throughout the day, these snacks are able to help us boost our body's metabolism. It helps us give us energy throughout the day. It helps us supply the glucose that we need to our brain. As well, it just helps us to prevent from overeating, because in America today, we have 74% of Americans are struggling with their weight. And that is it, everybody understands that. It's just a matter of, if we start to eat more consistently, that can help us throughout our our choices. As well, it just, when we are not overly hungry, I'm sure there's been a difference for you guys when you go to the grocery store. If you go to the grocery store really hungry, you buy a lot of stuff. If you go to the grocery store adequate or comfortable, you buy what your family needs. You're more in the planned mindset. And it's just a matter of having the consistency with your meals throughout the day and snacks. That helps you to be able to make better food choices as well. So planning them. Along with this, some people, they benefit a little bit better when it comes to those smaller, more frequent meals. Other people, they tend to do more fasting, or they do better with just the 3 meals throughout the day. It just depends on your personality, your body, what you can afford, but also what is in your, I guess, timing and your planning, because sometimes life just gets really busy. So figuring out how to be able to plan out your meals, even with my schedule where I have things booked out every 15 minutes, I make sure to have planned times where, even if I'm just like, okay, I'm going to grab a couple of snacks for in between clients or in between patients. And so everybody needs to just figure out a way to be able to individualize this for yourself.
Brandon,
Yes.
can you consider crackers a snack?
So crackers is a single portion of it. And what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit later about how do we make a snack a little bit more balanced. And this is actually the slide that we'll be talking about
Oh,
that.
okay,
So
sorry.
what,
Okay.
what we'll want to do is, like, if you have crackers, which is great, it's just a matter of, like, that's a simple carb or a complex carb, depending on if you have a wheat versus a whole grain. Then what you want to do is you want to pair it with something else. So if you're having crackers with fruit, now you're getting 2 components. So you look at the plate method here. This is the perfect time to be able to talk about it, because you can see here's the 5 major components of our meals. We have fruits that are in the top left. We have our grains that are the orange. We have the vegetables, protein, and dairy. So if you have like some crackers with some cheese, that's a little bit more of a balanced meal. If you sit there and you just eat cracker after cracker after cracker, that may not be the most appropriate thing, because now you're getting a spike in a lot of blood glucose, and then it can drop you. So like first thing in the morning, I would say, I think Amy was asking about the question of how do we be able to get a good come back from low blood sugars first thing in the morning. Things like a balanced snack. So yes, you want to have a simple sugar, but you don't want to just have a simple sugar, because it can like bring you up and then it can drop you after. So even if somebody was diabetic and they need to have a simple piece of candy, you want to have one that has a little bit of protein, or pair it with something else. So like if you have a piece of fruit, that will have the fiber as well. So you'll have the simple sugar that will go in and it'll help get you energized a little bit faster, but you also want to pair it with something else. So if somebody's consuming something like fruit juice, you don't have the fiber. So you want to pair it, you want to consume that to be able to bring your blood sugars up, but to keep them stable, you want to have some kind of protein or fat, or even some vegetables to be able to stabilize it throughout the day, so that you don't have those crashes. Because if you start playing with a lot of the high blood sugar, low blood sugar, it's usually because the meals are not balanced. So if you're looking at your plate and you realized, I just ate a whole bunch of pasta, there wasn't any chicken, I had some breadsticks with it, like, it's all carb based. It's not balanced out between the fibers and the proteins, so to be able to help keep those blood sugars balanced. So we talked about that when we find a balance between the snacks, it helps us to be able to control our weight. It helps prevent us from being over hungry and eating more than what we really need to at meals. I know that sometimes we get into the holiday season. We're coming up on the 4th of July and other types of things, or maybe even family gatherings. I know that in my family, sometimes the idea is, oh, well, if we have a breakfast, but we know we're going to have ribs or something big for dinner, I'm just going to eat a lighter meal beforehand so I can eat more in the evening. And what that does is it slows down your metabolism in the middle of the day. And so then everything you eat at that big meal, it just stores it. And you tend to be overly hungry going into the meal. So we overeat. So we just want to prevent that. So that's where the snacks come in between our meals to be able to help us out. As well, snacks that help us to be able to get our daily nutrients. So if you just hate having some kind of dairy first thing in the morning and you're having maybe some oatmeal and you're having fruit, so like looking at this type of plate, you got a little bit of blueberries on there, but you don't have any dairy and the goal is to have 2 to 3 servings in a day, maybe pull out that almond milk at lunch when you're having a snack and have a piece of fruit with it. So then you're getting 2 of these components combined together as well. So you just want to be able to remember the varieties there are. So, okay, of course, with snacks, you can have fruits, you can have vegetables, you can have low fat dairy options are always a great choice because that has a little bit higher in the protein, less in the fat. Proteins as well as whole grains that we talked about last week. So we have a schedule, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm just going to go ahead and pull up the question of making sure that we have it like first thing in the morning, right? So if we have a schedule that you are maybe the early riser, you wake up at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, okay? When would be an appropriate time to eat? So usually the best recommendation is within 30 minutes. If you're not exercising, you want to be able to be consuming something. So your body starts to actually be working for you. If you are moving, when you sleep throughout the night, your body goes into a fasting state. And so depending on how long you're sleeping, if you're sleeping for 5 hours or 10 hours, your body isn't consuming food at that time. So it's depleting what is stored in your liver, which is great because then when you eat, you're going to replete all of that back up. And so if you wake up first thing in the morning, I know a lot of people, they'll start out and they'll drink coffee in the morning or they'll just have something very light. What you want to do is make sure to get some kind of food into your body. Even if you're not very hungry, you can get a snack first thing in the morning and just grab a piece of fruit with some cheese or something like that to be able to start your body's metabolism going. If you're like a mid-morning person and you wake up a little bit later in the day, 7, 8 o'clock in the day, and you eat breakfast there and you have lunch later on at around 1, you may want to throw in a snack around 10 o'clock just to be able to make sure you're stable throughout the day. But again, it's not a huge amount. It's just a matter of where are you with it? And I know sometimes people will say, oh, I can't eat but after 6 o'clock, after 7 o'clock. But that's not always the most realistic thing because if you are awake and you are moving, you want to make sure to be feeding your body at least every 4 to 5 hours. So if your schedule is that you stay up until 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night, you may need to eat another snack. You may need to eat something. Now, I'm not encouraging having to eat a meal right before bed, but if you are staying up until 12 o'clock at night, heavens yes. Like I have met people that they tend to tell themselves that they're not going to eat another meal and they eat at 5, but then they're up till 1 and then they're grazing. And they may not be grazing on the best things. So they're dehydrated, they're not drinking very well, they're maybe playing video games or just up watching movies or doing whatever they're doing late at night. And they'll start to graze. And they'll usually be more processed sugars, more simple carbs, candies, snacks, chips. And so what we want to do is make sure to plan those snacks out according to what we are doing throughout our day. So making sure to just make it work for your schedule. And the big thing is just remember, like kids are very, very important and they don't know necessarily the best way to be able to do this. I honestly look at this plate and it's just like this little kid's kind of laughing. And I think it's like definitely photoshopped. Like, okay, we want to do this for like propaganda, but his entire plate is just vegetables. I have 23 nieces and nephews. And if I just gave them a plate of vegetables, they would not be happy. So you throw in some cheese in there, got a little sauce, they'll usually be a lot more happy. But making it easy for them to be able to have access to snacks is very, very important. So if you have a food pantry, if the things that are the lowest down where they can grab, or if they open up the fridge and everything is all processed things, make it easy for the kids. Make it as convenient as possible. If you have large bags of chips or snacks, put them in Ziploc bags that are the portion sizes and have them grab one of those and one of the healthier ones like a yogurt. So then they can combine it and have that healthy snack. But kids will naturally pick things that are good for them if they have access to it. If they don't, they're just going to pick whatever's going to be easiest to grab. So if the fruit isn't sitting there on the table, they probably won't grab it. If they have to open up the fridge and they see like just simple chips and stuff, that might be the things that they go for. So from the smallest member, we even have our little active athletes. Sometimes us as adults start to become a little bit more active, staying well hydrated. We need snacks throughout the day. So you always know kids will have their breakfast and lunch, and then they have those snacks in between meals. The busy working person, making sure that we have snacks if we're at the office, making sure to take that time. I know a lot of people, they get very busy. They have meetings. Making sure to be able to take the time to actually schedule this. Make sure that you're actually getting the consistency without your meal for your meals will help keep you healthy as possible. And for the seniors, this is again multi-generational. So making sure that you're getting that. If you have, I know that my grandma, she is now 92 and she has a little bit of Alzheimer's. She forgets, she doesn't get as hungry. So as we get older, our metabolism drops off and we don't need as much of the energy intake. And so they may eat breakfast and then they don't really feel hungry for lunch and dinner, and they'll start not eating as much, and that can cause a little bit of problems. So like they may not eat enough fiber, so then they get constipated. They may not get enough protein and they might become frail. So making sure that if you have loved ones that may need a little extra additional support, make sure to help them out. Getting these snacks will help get them the nutrients that they will need throughout their day. But remember that it's going to be very tailored to each person's individual states. So like elderly, they may need a little bit more balance for their meals to be able to help out with maybe stomach acidity, where they might have a little bit more like acid reflux. So be able to balance that out. Maybe they might need a little bit more vitamin B12 to be able to help keep them a little bit more balanced. As we get older, we may need a little bit more calcium. And I know sometimes when we're kids, we can drink dairy, but then as we get older, sometimes we develop a little bit of lactose intolerance, or that might be from your genetics. That's okay. They make sure to get those in some other way, like a supplement or even fortified foods are going to be essential. So looking at what your individual needs are. If it's a kid, make sure they're staying really well hydrated. They have access to snacks. For elderly, making sure they're balanced. So as we age, there is going to be a shift. Our body doesn't burn off as much. It's like you think of a car, even if we're not as active, our car is always on, our heart is always pumping, muscles are always moving, we're always breathing. It takes a standard, even if we're doing nothing except for sitting on the couch, we burn a certain amount of calories. As we age, that gets less and less because we don't have as much activity. You look at kids and they're running around, they need a little bit more depending on where they're at, but according to what their size is as well. So for adult men or for women, it's going to be between 1,500 and 1,600 calories. So sometimes people think like, oh, I need to lose weight, I'm going to go down. And I met people like this where they're like, I'm only eating 800 calories in a day. And that doesn't work because your body has a set, it's almost like saying, I want to have the minimal amount of gas in my tank, but I can't keep my car on because the tank's going to run dry. So, but you have to have a certain amount of gas in your tank for it to keep running. So for women, it's 1,500 to 1,600, depending on how active you are. For men, it's between 1,800 and 2,000 calories. So sometimes for men, like they usually on the back of nutrition labels, it'll all be based off of a 2,000 calorie diet. So if women are closer to 1,500, just think it's going to be 3/4 of whatever the portions are on there. And there's a certain amount of vitamins and minerals we need throughout our day. And if we get anything less than that 1,500, usually you're not going to be getting everything that you need. Sure, you can take supplements and you can try to supplement it, but the best way is through your fruits and vegetables, through your variety of your meals. Because if you're always having to depend upon protein shakes and supplements, sure, it'll keep you alive, but the quality of life may not be the best. And so what we want to do is make sure that we're getting that today. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about some tips and tricks of how can we get a little bit more of these balanced into our diet today. I just want to pause for a second. Does anybody have any questions that I didn't get to yet, Marcy? Okay,
No,
perfect.
Hey, Brandon,
Yeah.
I just want to say that the pictures
Uh-huh.
are awesome and the food looks so pretty. And what it's made me think about is the colors. You know, you had some of those snacks in there with the blueberries and some carrot, and it looked like maybe some nuts or something in there. And it was just so pretty that it, you know, really makes you want to think about eating, you know, because it looks
More
pretty
colors.
too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
And
thank you. This is really good.
And it's great because like the colors, the variety, like some people, they'll have their favorites types of foods, and that's where the variety comes in. And it's just, if you eat the same thing every day, you become less satisfied. Remember going to that, your favorite restaurant for the first time. Oh my goodness. Like you taste it and it's so savory, and whatever the plate was, like it just was so amazing. But then you eat that same thing over a period of time and you become less satisfied. So then now you have to add an appetizer. Now you have to have a dessert with it. Now you have to have a snack when you get home. You become less satisfied because your body loves variety. Variety is always going to be the balance to be able to help you get the most out of what you're hoping for. So when it comes to snacks, the first step that I'd recommend is plan ahead of time. So right now, everybody, hopefully in the comments, have just written down like, what is their favorite kinds of snacks? So think about, what is your family like for snacks? What do you generally buy? Is it granola bars? Is it fruits? Is it candy bars? Whatever it might be. Is it pastries? And from there, we want to start thinking, okay, am I getting a variety of the food groups? Am I just getting all protein? Am I just eating beef jerky for my snack? Am I only having just some toast? Am I just having a glass of milk as my snack and I'm just saying that's going to be satisfying? All of those are not bad. But what we want to do is we want to pair them together so that you get the variety of it. Whether it's going to be, you're going to want to have a little bit of dairy with your protein. You can combine those to be able to make sure that you get a variety of what you're going to need. And so just start planning those out. This can be a really fun thing. You can go online. You can go on Pinterest, you can go on Facebook, you can go on YouTube, you can go on so many different apps. I'll show you a little bit later that in the actual MyPlate app, they have a great location that has just, you can get a bunch of ideas. Fruitsandvegetables.org is great because they have it where you can just say like, I only have 5 minutes to make meal. What can I do? I only have 5 ingredients. What can I do? And there's so many tools out there. Just simply go into a cookbook. I'm sure everybody has a cookbook at home. Open it up and find out what you enjoy and play with it. Have fun with enjoying it. If you love chimichangas when you go to a restaurant, figure out how to make those at home. Most of the time you can make it for half the amount, half the cost, and you can make a whole bunch of it and you can use it for a little bit later in your day. So step one is, well, of course, we want to be able to start tracking and kind of start thinking about it. The next thing is we want to be able to we look at our baked goods, and those are things that are tasty and they're satisfying, but we want to just make sure, and I never want to say like, oh, you never eat that. If somebody ever tells me that I can't do something, I tend to go in the opposite direction. I remember I've worked with a personal trainer in the past, and his idea was demonizing milk. It was weird. I could drink alcohol, I drink coffee, do whatever I want with tea, but I couldn't have milk because he had done research and milk was bad. And milk was my passion. Like I love milk. And so when I had a cheat day, I would drink 8 glasses of milk. And he looked at it and says, that is a lot of milk. Like, you mean 8 cups? No, it was 8 glasses, like 3/4 of a gallon of milk I was drinking in one setting because like I couldn't have it any other time. So that's not a healthy way of doing it, because when somebody tells you you can't do something, our psychology, we tend to want to go in the opposite direction. So being able to just have a little less often. So even if you're just doing, instead of having a whole slice of cake, maybe just slice it down and you're having a little less and just eating it a little bit slower. So anything that has a lot of added sugars, solid fats, like a lot of butter or any type of margarine, or just a little bit of extra calories, so like a lot of nuts and seeds, just have that a little less often. What you can do is change up your colors. So as Martha was saying earlier, which is great, make sure to just get a nice variety of colors to your fruits and vegetables. This helps you to be able to get the fiber, but also the vitamins and minerals in a more natural way rather than just always have to depend on a supplement. And then last week, I think we talked a little bit about the grains. So trying to throw in a whole grain in there as well. If you're looking for those protein bars, look at it and say, okay, I'm going to grab there's nothing wrong with protein bars. Look at it, find it, oh, it has oats as the first ingredient. Perfect. Go over there, grab some yogurt. Now you've got two combined. So you have the whole grain and you have the yogurt combined together. Works out great as a good balanced type of snack. But again, we want to help with the improving your relationship with food and not demonizing foods. These pastries, baked goods, candies, they all have their place. It's just a matter of having them as a treat so that it's enjoying it instead of a staple to your food. Because I know that there's been family members and friends of mine that I've seen that they'll just eat cakes and cookies and they'll say that, well, that was a lot of calories and that was my meal. Not the most appropriate meal, but if you paired it with something else, might be a decent snack. So that can help us out to be able to not overeat. When it comes to step number 2, when it comes to just finding that balance. So you want to be able to have, for example, if you have a high fiber food choice, and so like you have a piece of fruit, you combine it with some type of dairy, like this type of parfait, now you've got a nice balanced meal. This little snack could be just a tiny little portion size of, you look at it and say, oh, okay, a serving of yogurt could be a half a cup. I get a little bit of granola and some fruit on top of it, perfect little snack. If you're wanting to be able to balance things out, like you have a little bit of protein or nuts, and then you have that with your fiber, would be perfect. So what we want to do is just make sure to be able to have that as a balance throughout so that we get a variety of those things. Meat, poultry, fish, and dairy are all great for vitamin B12 sources. So sometimes if people are more on the vegetarian lifestyle, which nothing opposed to that, make sure that you take a vitamin B12 supplement, because if you are vegan or vegetarian, you may not be getting that, and that you don't get that from your vegetables or any kind of plant-based diet. So make sure to just take that supplement. I've known several vegetarians, even dietitians, who, when I worked at the hospital, they were starting to lose their hair. They were starting to, they started having problems with their own lifestyle. And it was because they were so gung-ho about getting the variety of nutrients as a vegan, but they thought that they could get it all through diet. And sometimes you can't with vitamin B12. So definitely take a supplement if you need to, if that's your lifestyle choice. But fruits and protein, meats, seafood, that type of stuff is all going to be great for that essential nutrient. As well, just making sure to pair these. So remember the rule of 2. So when you have a snack, just try to get at least 2 servings or 2 different components. And if it's 200 calories, perfect. If you're getting closer to like the 400 calories, we're crossing more into like that meal type of range. So usually 150 to 200 calories is going to be perfect. So again, trying to make that complete and finding a balance between the different snacks. I just want to go back to the last, so for the snack planning, going back to our favorite food list. So looking at what you were able to put in there, just ask yourself, of what you put in there, was it missing on a certain type of ingredient? So like, did you not have any fruits or any vegetables? Does it have all carbs as a snack? So just think of like the snacks that you are normally eating throughout your day. To be able to adjust it, we just have to know, where are we at? What are we doing? And is it a good choice? Is it the best choice? Or is there little tweaks that we need to do? So instead of eating like a whole Costco muffin, maybe cut the Costco muffin in half and have it with something else so that you're having a little bit more of a balance instead of it just being all in one type of thing. And some of those are just whole cakes, so you got to be careful. As well, just overall getting that variety is going to be the best for us. And I like this because this is actually one I'm going to have Martha in the links below. Martha, did you, sorry, not Martha, Marcy, did you end up getting the email that I sent you?
Yeah, I have it. And I'm going to just need Sheila and Amy's email addresses. I have everybody else's.
Perfect.
So I could send them the handouts.
So if you ladies would like to send those, I have these set up for, in both of these is, I have a 2,000 calorie as well as a 1,600 calorie. So if you have the females of the group, the 15 to 1,600 calories, this is going to be where you're at. For the men of the group, the 2,000 calories might be a little bit closer to where you're at. Again, this is a guideline. I don't want you to be overly hungry, but I don't want you to be overly full either. And so looking at what there is in this type of form, just getting a variety of how many throughout the day. Sometimes people who are on a lower carb diet, they see the 5 ounces of grains and they're like, That is a lot of grains throughout the day. Again, we want to be able to, from last time, there's a lot of benefits to having whole grains in our diet, and it fuels us throughout our energy, as well as like things like dairy. I meet a lot of people that just cut out dairy altogether, but just remember there's things like soy beverages, there's almond, that you can get almond milk or cashew milk that's fortified, that you can make sure to get those vitamins that you're going to want. So this is just a great tool to be able to have. So again, just check and see how many calories am I roughly getting by how many servings am I getting. So you don't even really have to just count the calories, because I'm not a big calorie counter. It's more of like, just look at it and say like, okay, am I getting 7 servings of fruit in a day, but I'm not getting any protein? Maybe there's a little imbalance there. You might start losing your muscle mass. If you're getting 10 servings of protein, but you're getting no dairy, you may get a decent amount, but you may be storing more fat and you're not getting enough nutrients for your bones. So these are just great tools. The USDA recommended from dietitians to be able to help. The government is able to produce this for us. So this is just a great little tracker to help us to have an idea of how are we doing throughout the day. So going in, just as a little bit of a summary to be able to talk about what we did for snacks wise, is again, it's not about demonizing the foods. It's having that healthy relationship and that balance, having the colors, but having 2 components within a snack so that we can have it throughout the day to keep us from becoming overly hungry or overly full, but also getting the nutrients that we need to be able to make sure that we're there. Timing is going to be absolutely critical to be able to try to at least eat every 4 to 5 hours. If you need it more frequently, that's not a problem. Just eat it every 2 to 3 hours to have a snack in between your meals, and finding the time to actually plan it out. If you are hungry and you're going to the store, that's usually not the best time. What you want to do is just maybe find a variety, take the time, go on the line, look through books, and just find snacks that you guys would like. I have found that visually, so like what Martha was saying earlier, I am a very visual person. If I look at it and if it doesn't look good, I may not eat it, because I just like, the first sight is what we're at. Then we smell it, then we taste it. So there's so many components to enjoying food. So there, you want to be able to make sure to work with all of your senses. So look through books and see if there's any kind of visual snacks that you look at it and say, wow, that looks really good. Oh, if I have a toasted tortilla and I have hummus on it with a little bit of avocados, like that sounds like it would be tasty. Or I hate like hummus, or I hate avocados, I wouldn't want to do that. So don't let anybody kind of rope you into a box that you have to eat this, you have to eat that. Have a variety, enjoy it, have what your family enjoys throughout the culture, but throughout a balanced way. And so again, planning is a big focus, timing, and balancing out our meals. So those are the big 3 things that I would recommend when it comes to our snacks. And if we want, we'll go ahead and just take a little bit of an intermission, because I don't want to be droning on and kind of bore everybody and kind of burn them out too fast. And then we'll come back in about 5 minutes. So right now it's 10:46. So we'll start at 10:51. Okay. And if you have any questions, this is a good time to be able to put those down in the comments and we can review those in a little bit. So if you need to take a water break, now is a good time.
Brandon, do you want me to send those 2 attachments, or wait and send, more at the end?
Yeah. Are you talking about, yeah, go ahead and send all the attachments. You're welcome to
Okay.
send all those. I was going to send the PowerPoints, but
Right, I saw
really,
that. Okay.
it's really hard to break those down. It's a really big file. So. All right, we will give it one more minute and we'll get back to our class. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, I'm just looking through the chat right now and fantastic choices. Things like the mixed nuts and chocolate. Oh, man. Uh, dark chocolate and fruit. Augustine, fantastic snack. So the thing that I always recommend, especially with things that are going to be either like with high sugar and fat, like chocolate or nuts, they are delicious and they're satisfying, which is a great component, a single component, is be careful on the portion size because sometimes those can get really nutrient dense very fast. And I've seen a lot of people that are struggling with weight, they always hear that snack like things like nuts are great for you. Well, they are, but in moderation, because if you look at the portion size, sometimes they're only like a tablespoon for 100 calories. So if we're eating a couple of handfuls and we're not being mindful of it, it's easy to go through an entire container of nuts really quick. And that can be just a high source of calorie for a lot of people. And so just be careful with those. Those are not a bad snack whatsoever. It's just a matter of the amount. It's like I really want to do an educational class on making just a simple peanut butter and jelly sandwich, because you take white flour versus wheat flour. How much do you spread on there? Because I mean, some people, they can put a single tablespoon and just smear across it and have it as a nice light coat. Some people put almost half a cup of peanut butter on there, and that's a significant difference. And so just be careful with those. Amy, great job. Those are some great examples, like carrots and hummus, fantastic, as well as kind bars. I'd pair the kind bar with the string cheese, which is awesome. But yeah, and then crackers. I think we already talked about that. Is wouldn't want to just have a simple carb or a simple cracker, but you want to have it based with something else. So if you have crackers with grapes, sounds like a great meal. Okay. So moving on to the last section for the day is essentially a class number 3, but it's the part of the program. But this is called the heart healthy section. And so we are going to try to make this as a variety so that we have it for the whole family. And that's going to be our goal for this one. Is so being throughout our whole age, a majority of Americans today, the thing that usually kills us is either diseases from our heart or related to our heart, like stroke. And so what we want to do is make sure to be able to protect it. And so sometimes we don't always, like doctors can sometimes slide those in and we'll hear like, oh, I have a little bit of hypertension or blood pressure. Like they sometimes will lowball it. If you have either of those, that just means that you're creeping up into the yellow, into the orange, and we want to be able to bring that back down. If there's a reason why you have to take blood pressure medicine, we want to be able to help with that, and we can manage that and bring that down. What you don't want to do is like start getting where you have to start taking more and more to keep your heart healthy. As well, there's other things like sometimes we have genetically high cholesterol, or the cholesterol is high because of our diet. So we can control our diet. The cholesterol from our family genetics is a little bit more tricky, and we want to be able to make sure to follow the doctor's recommendation, but also be mindful of what our diet is as well. If we just blame everything on our parents, that isn't always a great excuse of why our heart is failing. So we can do our part. We can exercise. I have 5 generations of alcoholism in my family. All of the men on my family ended up dying because of it. I have learned from my father that we exercise and we take care of ourselves and we stay away from that type of weakness. And my dad is now close to 70 and he's in amazing shape. And so everybody's body is going to be a little bit different, but we want to be able to try to help our heart as much as possible and reduce those risks. So if we start getting into the yellow zone and we realize that we may have things, we want to improve our quality of life. These are going to be just a couple of tips today to be able to help us start to think about, plan, and prepare some of those meals a little bit in a better way to be able to help us with our meals. So again, I think after a while, after the series, planning, just taking the time, stop and thinking about what am I actually eating? How do I adjust the recipe that I'm actually using to make it a little bit more heart healthy conscious? When I'm shopping, what am I actually getting and preparing as a meal? Or if I'm doing prepackaged stuff, how do I find the best ones? If I'm getting canned foods, how do I get those? And hopefully today we can go through some of those to help us. This is one that's absolutely like, I mean, I was so grateful for when I was studying is there is a whole program about making sure that there is a food safety course. Just knowledge on just simple food basics, not just washing our hands, but like temperatures, when food should be thrown out. Sometimes if we make a bunch of it, what should we do with it? And we don't want food just to go bad, but how to be able to make sure that we're healthy. I know of so many people, even myself included, when I was a kid, I had a lot of stomach bugs. Well, I learned later on that a lot of those are actually caused from foodborne illnesses. So, like something may have happened and somebody may have like played with around in the dirt and then they didn't wash their hands and then you ate it. And now you got that virus or that bacteria and you got sick for a day and you threw up and then you felt better the next day. Usually, sometimes that is food related, not just a virus that's in the air. It's not like COVID or anything like that. And then just planning out those meals to help us to get more fruits and vegetables, a little bit less on the fats, or just knowing what kind of fats to use so that we're cooking in a little bit more appropriate meals for ourselves and for our families. So one of the things that I had Marcy to be able to send to you today is going to be this little sheet. And this is things that if you are just taking notes of any kind, I would just start thinking like, okay, how do I plan my menu? When I think of like, do I even plan out menus? Do I just kind of wing it and figure out what we're going to eat? Or if you actually know what your family's going to be eating, there's a reason why restaurants and hospitals and stores do that, because it's much more cost effective. Instead of just kind of winging it and having to go to a fast food restaurant and pay $10 for a meal here and like restaurant for $15 to $20 per person here, you can make an entire meal in your kitchen for $2. It's quite a bit cheaper. And I think a lot of people think that eating healthy has to be expensive. And it's just a matter of if you're trying to do both, it does get a little bit more expensive because you're not committing to one or the other. So just play with what you can do. As well, there's a portion of this about preparing your kitchen. When I went to take care of my sister and she ended up being sick, I took care of all of her kids. One of the first things I did is I went through her pantry and I'm like, okay, this is a mess. Like we got to figure this out. And so I pulled everything out. I cleaned it out. I put all like little bags and portion sizes and got her helped out. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that today, as well as things that you can do for shopping to help you to be able to hit those goals. And if you have any major goals with your heart, just either prevention or helping somebody that you love, write those goals down, because then hopefully I can help set that up for you, or we can figure it out in a little bit later sessions to be able to accomplish those goals, to be able to keep our hearts healthy. Oh, I apologize. I must have had. That's great. Perfect. So going into just, again, looking at the MyPlate, because this is a little bit more simple of like when we're looking at our plates, just look at the balance. Finding that balance is going to be a good start to be able to help with our heart. If we are noticing that I have pasta on one side, I have bread on the other side, and I have a glass of milk, like it's all carb based, might be a little bit harder on our body, might be a little bit more challenging for our blood sugars or for our heart. And so what we want to do is get a variety. There are great fruits and vegetables, get a variety of color. If you're going to be doing grains, I don't want to be able to beat a dead horse, but just looking at a variety of these. So an example or a resource that's completely free to everyone, you can go on myplate.org and you can just type in MyPlate onto Google or any search engine. And this is going to be the website that's going to pop up. This is absolutely a fantastic resource. You can go to the kitchen and it has recipes. You can literally go through, look at the pictures, add them to your recipe book, and they'll have you, and you can say like how many people are in your family, have the serving size, and it'll print you out like a whole shopping list. It's really helpful. There's other ones that if you're just wanting to know a little bit more about like, how do I eat healthy? What is a grain? What do I need to do? There is this section under eating healthy, and you can just see like how do I get a little bit more fruits or vegetables in my diet. If you have no idea where to even start, the underneath here is what's on your plate. That is a great spot right there, and it says just take the quiz. I took the quiz and I saw that like, oh, I wasn't getting enough orange vegetables. Cool. And they break it down by how many are you having every day? Are you getting enough of what you need? And so even as a dietitian, there's always room for improvement. And for you, this is just a free tool. You don't have to pay $150 or $200 per hour to be able to go see a dietitian or some crazy thing. Just use the free tools that are here to be able to help you out. They put a lot of work and a lot of love. There's a lot of dietitians that create this that can help you out. So going into our next section is planning our menus. So a lot of people, this is kind of where their hiccup is like, okay, how do I plan my menu? And if you are a carb person, if you love grains, let's go back into what we talked about last week and just think, okay, women, it's 5, men, it's 6. You're wanting to have some sort of grain throughout the day. And think if you're having 3 meals only and no snacks, okay, you'll have to have a grain at every meal. If you have snacks, it's easy to be able to get those 5 servings within the day, just making sure half of those are whole grains. For our vegetables, we want to be able to shoot for 2 to 2.5 cups. If we have fruits, try to shoot for 2 to 2.5 cups as well. So on total, I always say that 5 rule, you have 5 grains, well, you want to try to shoot for 5 fruits and vegetables in a day as well to get that balance. When you're doing dairy options, shoot for the lower fat dairy. So if you're going cottage cheese, you can get the whole fat, you can get the low fat, or you can get the fat free. I have found that for any person, if you are changing your lifestyle, if you do a radical shift, it's a diet. But if you do little shifts, so if you love your family just always buys whole milk, okay, or a whole cottage cheese or whole yogurt, what you can do is transition to a 2% and even mix it where you're getting half whole, half 2%, and then slowly transition yourself to that lower amount, and then slowly go to a 1% or low fat. Sometimes you can't. Like I can't quite stand having low fat milk, but I can do or fat free milk. I can do 1%. So we transition to a healthier state. That's all it is making those choices where it's just a little bit easier, because the milk fats are going to be higher in saturated fats, animal fats, so it's harder on our heart. So we want to just bring that down as low as possible. You still get the vitamins and minerals, you still get the proteins, it's just less of the saturated fats. As well, when it comes to proteins or meats of any kind, what you want to do is like if you have a big steak, it's great, and like people always want to cook it with all the fat on it, great if you want all that flavor. But when you get it, just cut off that fat so you're not having that extra calories, because again, that is very, very dense when it comes to fat. It usually is quite a bit more calories, twice as much as like a carb or a protein. So that's just a simple way to be able to get a healthier amount of protein with not as much of the fat. If you have chicken, just shave off a little bit of that fat or that skin so that you're getting more of the protein itself. So just little tricks to be able to get in there. I know sometimes this just sounds kind of like basic nutrition recommendations, but really it does. It comes down to helping out. Now, this one I really like because the kitchen, this is where all the magic happens, is how do we be able to get it? And the first step is you sometimes just need the equipment. If you just don't have any of the tools, it's really hard to be able to cook if you don't even know where the knives are. And so being able to get the essentials is going to be able to help be for your heart. So investing in certain things. So one of the couple of the recommendations that they have is clean out your freezer. If you got a bunch of freezer stuff and you've never used it, it's been in there for 10, 15 years, maybe it's time to clean out the freezer so that you have a little bit more space to be able to do the things that you need. Collect a couple of food containers, things like plastics and glass. And that will help you to be able to store things. So like if you cook and you make a larger amount of it, you can then store it either in the freezer or the fridge. Maybe be careful on the glass in the freezer, but it just depends on what you're going to be using it to store it in. As well, just organize the pantry and the cupboard. So this is like literally when I went to my sister's house, she like was blown away because it was so much easier for her kids to be able to have an easier access to foods. And I just went through and I cleaned out her fridge, cleaned out her pantry, and I just made it easier accessible. If you have the ability to store foods and just put them in smaller portions, it helps the whole family to just simply grab and be able to have what you need. This does take a little bit of time. Again, that planning and preparation. If you have like a little bit of weekend and you get your family with you, make it as a fun game. Pull out the trash can and you just like have the little kids throw it in the trash can like it is a basketball hoop. If you make it a game, sometimes it's fun. If you're just like, all right, we're just going to have to scrub out this and that. If it's not fun, then it's usually like, it makes it where the kids don't want to be in the kitchen. Incorporate them into the kitchen. If you have elderly that live with you, incorporate them into the planning process. Let them go shopping with you. Have a cart. They can walk around the shopping center with you and they get to pick kind of the foods that they see and they can enjoy those as well. As well, some of the essentials that are really, really helpful that you can get in your kitchen that if you haven't had them already, slow cookers. So things like crock pots can help out. If you want to plan something first thing in the morning and you want to throw it all in, that can help you to be able to serve a big family and to be able to do it in a very easy, simple way. You just dice up the potatoes, the veggies, whatever you need to. There is a whole bunch of, I think I was over at Costco and Sam's Club, and they have little like crock pot recipes. And I mean, you can get them online for free. You don't have to buy books. There's just lots of tools for that as well. I know sometimes people will demonize microwaves. You're not getting any radiation from those, I'm sorry. All the microwave does is it vibrates the water molecules from within whatever it is. So if you put a plate in there, the fridge or into the microwave, and you microwave it, like it's not going to heat up because there's no water on it. But you want to be able to use a little bit of water or moisture to be able to cook things. So like we'll do a pot, we'll put a little bit of chicken, a little bit of water in it, and it's easy way to be able to poach things. So microwaves, very, very easy way to be able to help you to be able to have a little bit healthier choices, as well as nonstick pans. If it's easier to clean up, it's easier to cook, more likely to use it. Once those start to become nonstick and you have to scrub for 10 minutes or you have to soak it overnight, it's usually not worth it. So making it as efficient and as easy as possible. Even some things like food processors and choppers can help out a ton. And then indoor grills. Sometimes those, if somebody wants to be able to have a steak or a grill or stuff, those are all great methods and tools to be able to help us when it comes to having those choices. So really having the right tool for the right job. If you are sitting there and you're spending an hour making pasta, there might be like a better tool. If you have a KitchenAid, there might be an attachment that you can just simply have the food processor make the flour and mix it all together, and it'll shoot it right out, make it really easy. So make it as efficient as possible, because today everybody is so busy. Make it helpful for yourself. So when we go out shopping, what are things that we want to be able to consider to be able to help with our heart? And there's just a couple of like little simple tricks that I want to be able to share with you today. And so we'll go into the first one is stock up on the staples. So the things that your family eats, there are a variety. Let me see if it's going to be on the next one right here. So I have a list that Marcy is sending to everybody, and it's this really comprehensive, and it's a great list. I would say go through with your significant other, your family member, a spouse, your parent, your kids, and just talk to them about it. If your family doesn't really eat lentils, maybe that's not on your diet. But if that is a thing that you guys absolutely love, and go through each one of these, because sometimes having the staple at your house where you just have it, maybe you have frozen chicken and it's just right in the freezer, and instead of having a whole chicken, you want to do the chicken strips. That makes it really easy because you can just pop those out, throw them right in the microwave, just get them going. If you have frozen vegetables, instead of having to dice them up every single day, having them in the freezer or in a can can help out. But having those staples can be essential to be able to make it easier for you to cook. I don't know about you guys, but in the kitchen, there's been several times where if you don't have a stocked up, a good balance of the basics in your house, you'll get to a recipe and it'll say like, okay, you need a tablespoon of cumin, and you don't realize you don't have that herb. Or, oh, you need to have a couple of stalks of celery. It's like, there's occasional times where you need the specialty types of foods, but simple things like bread, if your family eats a lot of bread, or if you love oatmeal, like having a certain set amount, having that in a larger bulk can help out to be able to stock up on those things. So like if your family does the basics like flour and sugar and you make your own breads, fantastic. If you don't ever make your own breads, maybe just make sure to have like a frozen loaf of bread in the freezer so that you don't have to run to the store every time you run out of it. But stocking up on those can help out a ton. Just because you buy it in bulk doesn't mean that it's always the most cost effective, but sometimes, a lot of times it is. You can wait for those specials. There's apps that you can track and see, oh, when is a certain canned food on sale? You can go and get those. If you have a friend that works at the supermarket, sometimes they can tell you when things are a little bit cheaper, but you can just, as you go in, you can see what the costs of each things are and just get them as needed. If you live out in the country and you don't have access to shopping a lot, taking advantage of not just the fresh fruits, but the frozen and the canned can be great resources according to kind of, if you only get to go shopping once a month and you live out in Fernley, maybe that might be the best way is like kind of balance out the fresh fruits for the first week or two. Then you go into the canned stuff, and then you go into the frozen stuff so that your family can get a variety of those fruits and vegetables as well as other foods as well. So starting out with making kind of the list, shopping. So we have now a list that's kind of the basics of what our family eats, but look at it and just go through like, what did your family eat in a given week? Do you guys make pasta? Do you make tacos? Do you make Mexican food? Are you making, does your family just love breakfast for dinner and you just consume a ton of eggs? That's great. Make a list of it. So then you have an idea like, what is my family normally eating? And what can we do to play with that to get a little bit more variety? Instead of having only bananas for your only fruit every single day, change it up so that your family's getting a variety, and having melons in the season thereof. If you're having apples, make sure that they're in the proper season. But having that as a variety will help out a ton. If you're only cooking for two, sometimes like taking the time to chop up all the vegetables, to stir it up. My brother came across this challenge is, if you're only cooking for right now, it's a lot of work. But if you cook for a larger amount, you can then use that for other days. But some people don't, they don't do well eating the same thing over and over and over. Some people, they can do that. I can't do that. So what I do is I cook a lot at one time. So like maybe on Sunday, I'll cook a large amount and be like, okay, we're going to be making lasagna, and I'll make several servings of it. And the rest of them will all go to the freezer, but there'll be individual portions so that I can pull them out and put them in the oven and cook them as needed. And so for us, like, think of not just cooking for today, but cooking for a variety. If you need things like salads, maybe keep the dressing on the side so that it doesn't spoil as quickly. If you're going to have vegetables, don't just cook like a whole bunch of vegetables all at once, because maybe they don't freeze as well. So having maybe frozen vegetables that you can pull out, get the serving that you need to be able to use it. So utilize it where it's going to be as efficient as possible, but cost effective as well, because leftovers is definitely an art. But I don't know of anybody that like hasn't ever used frozen meals, that if you just buy them at the store, sometimes they're a little bit more expensive, but you can make them yourself and just like, oh, you made a big pot of rice. Instead of letting it go to waste or throwing at the chickens, what you can do is you can portion those out and put them into little serving containers with whatever sauce or whatever chicken or whatever type of protein or whatever you have at that meal that day. Put them right in the freezer. You now have a meal later down a month later that you're like, oh man, I remember I had chicken cordon bleu and that was so good. Oh, we have some of that left over. I don't have to cook tonight. I can just throw it right in the microwave. Might be a great source. So utilizing leftovers is just an art. So I wish I had this magical formula of how to do it. I usually recommend, if you would just have 1 or 2 days a week that you're really good at cooking, just cook a larger amount, portion them out, put them in the freezer. That way they don't spoil and you can pull them out anytime. And after you do that a couple of times in a month's period, like, you now have 4 extra meals that you can come back to that you really enjoy. So you're not having that food waste, and it's a little bit more cost effective. If you have to throw things away, they tend to be a lot more expensive. As well, saving the time when it comes to prep. So if you just buy a head of lettuce and then you have to chop it up and it takes you 10 minutes to prepare things, versus having a pre-cut bag of lettuce might be a thing that you want to do. But again, how quickly does it go away? Because if you have a chopped bag of lettuce and it only lasts 2 to 3 days when it comes to the folate, then maybe it's not necessarily the best thing that you want to do. So figuring out what things have a certain lifespan, because they do deteriorate over time. So don't be afraid of frozen vegetables or frozen fruits, because they usually pick those at the prime stage of their life cycle and they flash freeze them. So all the nutrient contents is right there. Cans sometimes will be a little less, but be careful with canned foods, because sometimes they'll be really high in either syrup or salt. And that's not the best for our heart. So we want to make sure we have a little bit less salt, more fruits and vegetables. So you want to have more potassium, less salt. So just looking at them, if they don't say salt-free or low sodium or heart-friendly, usually that means they have a lot of salt if they're canned. So you just want to keep an eye on those types of things. Many times fruits and vegetables that are dark or orange or legumes or whole grains, they have a great source of vitamins like folate. And it's important to be able to make sure that we have that for things like our blood, our oxygen levels, to be able to make sure that our body is functioning how it should. So we just want to make sure that when we are consuming the foods, they are in peak condition. If we grab a banana and we're just hungry and we're getting them when they're green, maybe they're not going to be as nutritious as if they're yellow. But if they're starting to go brown, like maybe throw those into the freezer and use them as banana bread or some kind of other ingredient into a protein shake, but don't let them go bad. I know of people will use spinach into shakes. And I found, like with my family, we'd have this intent to eat spinach, but then it would go bad after a short period of time. So what you can do is just simply get the spinach, throw it right in the freezer, and when they thaw, they go a little soft. But if you're throwing them in as chips into your protein shake, it's a way to get vegetables and fruit without it spoiling. So just be able to be a conscious shopper and being a little bit more smart with our choices can help it from going bad too fast. As well, just shopping in the season thereof, because if you're just craving berries and you just love them, cool. You may have to get the frozen ones because sometimes berries aren't in season. Other times, like we just have a lot of melons. Fantastic. Just check and make sure. You can shop on like apps or on newspaper ads or even wherever you go shopping. Sometimes they'll have certain specials. So shop with the produce that are in season is usually the most effective and most cost effective, as well as any kind of specials. And I've seen this a lot because it's easy for people to want to demonize any kind of fats because they think like, oh, if I eat fats, I'm going to get fat. That's not the correlation. So fat is stored when we have too much calories at one given time. So if you think I'm only going to eat once a day, but I'm going to have all my calories in one day, and I'm going to fast the rest of the day. What's happening is you're consuming so much, your body can't utilize it. So it just goes right into a storage tank. So it's like if you're over there gassing up your vehicle, well, if you need extra gas, you go over there and you pull up like the back of your vehicle and you put it into an extra storage tank. That's what happens is we just store extra food that we can't consume. But fats are not something to be afraid of. It's just a matter of knowing what kinds are good versus bad. So recommendation is usually solid fats. So things like butters, lards, or margarines are going to be solid at room temperature. And what those will have is they'll be a little bit higher in saturated fats or even in trans fats. What we want to do, and so most of the time we always say there's certain foods that are not like bad. We want to have less of them. Saturated fats are less. So that's going to be more of like the things that are going to be more animal based, or even things like coconut oil can be good, but it's higher in saturated fats versus trans fats. Those all around, like that's just not a good thing to eat. So like there's very few things that dietitians will ever say like just don't eat. Trans fats are usually one of those, and that's usually just going to be a saturated fat. It's been heated, processed, cooked, fried, and it just goes into a trans fat. And that one is harmful to our body all around. Like it takes our good fats and gets rid of them, and it takes the bad fats and it brings them up, and essentially it just makes cardiovascular disease a nightmare. So that is one, like I think of all the foods, when I say like you want to avoid, I think that's the one is trans fats. Other than that, it's just more of finding the balance between them. So solid fats, we want to eat just less of those, but the healthier fats are going to be the things like oils. So things like we always hear the gold standard of olive oil or extra virgin olive oil, but there's other good vegetable oils that are going to be better for you as well, like things like canola oil or peanut oil or soft margarines. Some of those can be good as well. So, but again, moderation. So if you're going to be doing a little bit of dipping and having a little bit of bread, fantastic. If you're going to be frying things, maybe not be the best choice for us. As well, looking at our food labels, because sometimes these guys can be a little bit more higher in fat. And so some things like potato chips or other treats that we have can have a little bit of trans fat. So they have to require that on all the nutrition labels. So if you're not sure about it and it looks like one of your guilty pleasures, just look at it and see. I think a majority of places, because they know that it's really bad for you, they have taken it off of their menu. But be careful, because sometimes they can play with it and they can show, oh, like creamers and coffees. Sometimes they have a lot of trans fat, but the way that they get away with it is they will have such a small amount. If it has less than 0.5 grams per serving, they don't have to claim it. So things I have noticed, like a little trickiness, you get the spray butters. Well, each spray of those has no calories, but there's 1,400 servings in it, and it has oil and fat in it. So there's not really a way to know for sure what's actually in that bottle, because they're claiming it as fat-free product. So it's just something to be aware of like looking at the serving size. If it says that it's a spray pan, but it has it has oil in it, but it has 0 calories. That's usually not true. It's just the way that they market it. So be careful on the marketing, can definitely get you. But you just want to overall avoid that trans fat. Make sure to lower the saturated fats. Get the whole grains are going to be a little bit better. So things that are going to be a little bit more just to be aware of are things like cookies, donuts, full sharp cheddar cheese, things that are going to be high fatty cheeses, as well as things like whole fat ice cream. So just being able to be aware of things like that can definitely be things to watch out for and be a little bit more careful with. Certain methods of cooking can help out definitely. So if you're throwing butter in versus oil can help out change the amount of cholesterol versus how many calories you're consuming in a given meal. So be careful of what types of methods you're going to be using as well. Like if you just did like a spray and you did a quick spray, there's really going to be very few calories versus if you're doing a whole stick of butter into a meal. So be careful on what you're cooking. Sometimes these, even though it looks like, oh man, like lots of vegetables, lots of good things in this meal, it's fantastic. Just be careful on the oil because that can get you in the long run. As well, so microwaving is a great source to be able to help you like defrost and reheat different foods. Using different types of pots if you wanted to do more slow cooking. And these are ways that instead of having to use a fat, I said a little bit earlier that you can do poaching, and you can put a little bit of water at the bottom of it, put it into an enclosed container, well, that's not sealed, and you can microwave it and you can cook chicken and make it nice and tender. Makes it really easy without having to add a lot of the extra oils and the fats. Other ways and sources that are heart healthy cooking, you can do things like baking, roasting, as well as grilling. So those things, most of the time, you don't have to just cover it in a bunch of fat. You can steam it and things that are going to help out a ton. As well, certain foods do much better in different cooking methods. So like fish, our family ended up getting a sous vide where we put a fish in there, vacuum sealed, put it in water and it cooks it. Other things like poaching could be a great way where you can cook it with a little bit of liquid, and instead of adding oil, you can add things like water, juice, you can add a little bit of like vinegar, and that can help cook that to give it a little bit more flavoring. And instead of having only add salt, you can add things like herbs and spices to really add that flavor to it. But even things like poached vegetables, just try to make sure that you're not cooking them over, because if you're adding a bunch of water and you're just boiling vegetables, you can lose a lot of that vitamin content, especially like the vitamin C and the folate that's really good for us, like folic acid, helps with our nerves and everything. We want to be able to make sure that we're not overcooking certain things. So just until they're nice and soft and tender, but not mush. And then as well, just avoid overall like overly frying things that you don't have to. That can be a challenge. As well, just to be able to make sure that we are keeping up with time itself. There's many different types of cooking methods, so play with them, have fun with it, share them. I think a lot of people, they love cooking and they have a passion for it, and then they have all these recipes, they have books, they have everything. Use the resources that you have. Try trimming up just a few things, like if you have meats, trim up the fats. If you are going to be having things that are going to be saturated fats, just try to find ones that are 2 or 3 grams or less, so that they're not like full saturated fat types of items, and that'll help you out as well. Playing in the recipes. The recipes, this is one of the things that I absolutely love doing, because if a recipe says flour, doesn't mean that you have to have flour. You can play with that, and you can use almond flour, you can use whole wheat flour, you can play with it and do a mix and match. If it says sugar, you don't have to just use sugar. You can use honey, you can use sweet and low, you can use different things to be able to adjust it to make it a little bit healthier. If you realize like, oh, it's calling for butter, okay, can I get the non-salted butter, or do I have to do the salted butter? Because if you do the non-salted butter, less salt in your diet. Or if you can switch it up and just do oil instead, sometimes that doesn't really change a huge difference. If you're making more baked goods and they're more like a flaky crust, sometimes you have to. So using the unsalted pie crust might be a little bit easier. So just things that just to be thinking about. Try to get a little bit more heart healthy conscious, looking at the sodium level, looking at the variety of the flour, see if we can play with it to make it a little bit more healthy. Looking at the oils, look at the fats, and see what we can do when it comes to our recipes themselves. As well, just try to see what we can do when it comes to just reducing the fat in most recipes can really be reduced by even a third to a half without really making a huge difference. Sometimes, like when you go to a restaurant, they are going to put a lot of butter and a lot of oil and a lot of like of those fats onto it to make it really savory, to make it really taste good. So usually if you have a recipe, you can cut it out by about a half, or even the sugar, you can even decrease the sugar quite a bit. And even if like these little cookies, you can just do a little bit of powdered sugar instead of having a huge amount of sugar in the items themselves. Last little bit, like with the grains themselves, is try to increase our fiber. Fiber is going to be essential for our heart, especially the soluble fiber. The insoluble fiber will be more for our GI system. The soluble fiber will be great for our heart. So whole grains are going to be a simple way. If we're having more of white flour, switch over to the whole wheat. That will give you a little bit more of the fiber to be able to help balance our bodies out. If you're realizing you're not great with fiber, fiber supplements can be a great way to help you as well. And it gives you a good texture. Food safety, when it comes to our fridge themselves, super important is making sure that you don't have raw meats hanging over the top of other foods. If you have, usually the recommendation is if you have ready to go prepared meals, you want to have that on the very top. Any kinds of the raw foods, you want to be able to balance those out. Usually things like pork are going to need to be cooked a little bit longer. So you want to make sure those are lower down. So if something happens and it drips, most people are going to have those all sealed in containers so they're not dripping, but make sure that you don't have certain foods that are going to be raw foods over the top of cooked foods, because you just think again, what are kids going to be easily grabbing? And if they have something where like there's chicken that's dripping onto their yogurt and they grab onto it and it's dried on it and they handled it, now they can get sick with foodborne illness because it's on the outside of whatever they might be grabbing, even if it's string cheese. So just be careful with that. Leftovers, usually the recommendation is if you haven't frozen it, usually you want to, within 1 to 3 days, either eat it, throw it out, or freeze it. But you don't want to keep it past 3 days. So just be careful of that, as well as look on the inside of your refrigerator and make sure that your temperature is maintained at 38 degrees. If that tends to fluctuate, you want to play with that, because if you don't trust the thermometer, put a thermometer inside the fridge at the top and make sure that the top of it doesn't get any warmer than 38 degrees, so that things aren't getting too cold, but they're not getting too hot either. Because that danger zone between 40 degrees and 140 is really a danger zone. If it gets into that range, bacteria tends to grow and we can get sick very, very quickly. And so we just want to make sure that the proper temperature is there. So just check your thermometers would be a good heart healthy choice as well for you today. So, and I think that's going to be kind of wrapping it up just as a all-inclusive, just to be able to help you understand a little bit better. Just start looking at your grocery list. Look at what your family is planning when it comes to their meals and getting a good variety. Stock up on the staples so that it makes it easier for you to be able to go into the kitchen and grab and make whatever you want. If you're always having to go to the store for something, it makes it a little bit harder to be able to cook because it takes time to go over there and buy it and come back. Making sure that you are labeling and just know how old certain things are in your fridge, and labeling and making sure the temperature is correct so that they don't go bad. As well, cook for a variety so that you're getting a variety of foods, but making maybe a larger portion amount and putting them in the freezer or cooking them for another day makes it save you a lot of time, so that it's easier for you to be able to save money, but foods aren't going bad as well. And I think that's going to be it. So if you have any other final questions about anything today or for next week, we are excited to be able to have you. Tell your friends about the ones, if they're not here today, Thursday is still available, and we have our YouTube channel as well. But yeah, put those questions down there and I'm happy to be able to go through them. This is my contact information. So if you need help from a dietitian, or if you want to be able to ask me any particular questions, my email is cloverblife@gmail.com. And this is my personal, my business number. So if you call it, you'll probably have to say nutrition versus, and then you'll find me. Or you can just simply text me and I'll be able to respond very quickly for you. Awesome. Well, I think that is going to be it for today. And I appreciate it. I know this is a little bit longer. Some of these classes are going to be a little bit more dense, so it might be a little bit longer sessions from here on out. And
Yeah, everybody's saying what a wonderful class, how informative, really cool, Brandon.
excellent. Well, I'm glad that everybody was able to be here. I know that was a lot of material, a lot of content. And then I will make sure to go through the questions. So Amy, I will make sure that some of those questions that you had, I'll make sure to have those in similar to what I did today on next week's course so that you'll have all those answers. Cool.
This was
Thank you
great,
so much for
Brandon,
everybody
again. Hey,
participating.
everybody, spread the word is all I have to say, because these classes are awesome. So thank you.
All right, guys.
Yep,
Have a
I
great day.
agree.
Okay? Thank you.